History whispers the names of many kings, yet few resonate through the ages like David, the shepherd king of Israel. His life, a tapestry woven with threads of courage, faith, tragedy, and triumph, continues to captivate and inspire. Born in obscurity, destined for greatness, David's journey from tending sheep to ruling a nation is a testament to the power of unwavering faith and a heart surrendered to God. David's story is not merely a historical account. It's a mirror reflecting the human experience in all its complexity. His triumphs were great, his victories resounding, but his life was not without its shadows. David's failures, born out of human weakness, serve as poignant reminders that even the most favored can stumble. Yet it is within these very stumbles that we uncover the depth of David's character. His unyielding faith, his profound repentance, and his unwavering love for God, even in the face of adversity, paint a portrait of a man after God's own heart. David's story begins not in the grandeur of a palace, but in the simplicity of a shepherd's life. The youngest son of Jesse, David spent his youth tending his father's flock in the fields of Bethlehem. It was a humble beginning, one that might have easily faded into anonymity. Yet, God saw something extraordinary in the heart of the young shepherd. He saw a heart ablaze with courage, capable of facing down lions and bears to protect his sheep. He saw a heart overflowing with devotion, pouring out its joys and sorrows in songs of praise and lament. And so, when the prophet Samuel arrived, seeking the next king of Israel, God directed him to David. Anointed with oil, a symbol of divine selection, David's life took an unexpected turn. He was no longer merely a shepherd boy. He was the chosen one, destined to rule a nation. David's life was a testament to the enduring power of faith. He faced giants, battled enemies, and navigated the treacherous waters of power, all the while clinging to his belief in a God who saw him, knew him, and loved him unconditionally. It is this unwavering faith that continues to resonate with people centuries later. David's story reminds us that God sees beyond outward appearances, looking instead at the heart. He calls us to live lives of courage, integrity, and unwavering devotion, even when faced with insurmountable odds. In the Psalms, David's own words echo through time, offering solace, guidance, and inspiration. They remind us that we are not alone in our struggles, that our joys and sorrows are understood, and that even in the darkest of nights, a dawn of hope awaits. The Judean hills, blanketed in the soft hues of sunrise, bore witness to the early days of David's life. Bethlehem, a town known more for its tranquil pastures than its powerful sons, was where David, the youngest of Jesse's 8 sons, spent his youth. Life was simple, a rhythm dictated by the rising and setting sun, the needs of the flock, and the vast expanse of the sky above. David's days were spent amidst the rolling hills, his loyal canine companion by his side, guiding the sheep to fresh pastures. He learned the patience of a shepherd, waiting for the stragglers, his gaze scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. The sheep, each with its own unique markings and temperament, became his charges, his responsibility. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the fields, David would find solace under the shade of a gnarled olive tree. It was here, amidst the rustling leaves and the gentle bleating of the sheep, that he would often lose himself in the melodies of his harp. The music, at times joyful and exuberant, at times hauntingly beautiful, flowed through him like a river, expressing the emotions that words often failed to capture. A shadow had fallen upon the land of Israel, a shadow cast by the menacing presence of the Philistine army. These fierce warriors, their armor gleaming in the sunlight, had marched from the coastal plains, their intent clear to crush the Israelites and claim dominion over their land. The valleys, once alive with the laughter of children and the songs of shepherds, now echoed with the ominous tramp of soldiers' boots. Fear, a chilling wind, swept through the Israelite camp, settling upon the hearts of even the bravest warriors. The Philistines, known for their military prowess and their ruthlessness in battle, were a formidable foe. The fate of Israel, it seemed, hung precariously in the balance. News of the Philistine advance reached the ears of David, who was tending his father's sheep in the fields of Bethlehem. He listened intently as a messenger, his face etched with worry, recounted the tales of the Philistines' might and the growing despair within the Israelite ranks. David's heart, however, did not yield to fear. Instead, a fire of righteous anger ignited within him, a fierce determination to defend his people and the God he served. His 3 eldest brothers had joined the Israelite army, answering the call to defend their homeland. David, though still young, felt a surge of responsibility for his brothers' well-being and a deep desire to contribute to the defense of his people. He knew that the God who had delivered him from lions and bears in the wilderness would not abandon his people in their hour of need. The Valley of Elah, a narrow strip of land nestled between 2 ridges, became a stage for a confrontation that would determine the fate of 2 nations. It was here that the Philistine army, a sea of bronze and iron, stood arrayed in battle formation, their ranks stretching as far as the eye could see. Facing them, on the opposite ridge, stood the Israelite army, their numbers dwarfed by the sheer might of the Philistine force. From the Philistine ranks, a giant of a man emerged, his towering frame casting a long shadow across the battlefield. Goliath, for that was his name, was a sight to behold, his armor gleaming, his spear like a weaver's beam, his voice booming across the valley like thunder. He was the champion of the Philistines, a warrior whose reputation for strength and brutality preceded him. For 40 days, Goliath strode out each morning and evening, his voice echoing across the valley, taunting the Israelites, challenging them to send forth their champion to face him in single combat. "Choose you a man," he roared, his voice dripping with disdain, "and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall you be our servants and serve us." Fear, like a paralyzing poison, coursed through the veins of the Israelite soldiers. They trembled at the sight of Goliath, their spirits crushed beneath the weight of his challenge. King Saul, tall and imposing though he was, paled in comparison to the Philistine giant. He paced within his tent, his heart heavy with dread, for he knew that the fate of his kingdom rested on finding a champion who could defeat the seemingly invincible Goliath. One morning Jesse summoned his youngest son. "David," he said, "take now for your brothers this parched corn and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to your brothers. And carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how your brothers fare, and take their pledge." David, ever obedient to his father, gathered the provisions and set off towards the valley of Elah. As he approached the Israelite camp, David could hear the echo of Goliath's booming voice, the Philistines' taunts hanging heavy in the air. He made his way through the throngs of soldiers, their faces etched with fear and uncertainty. He found his brothers amongst the ranks, their expressions grim as they listened to Goliath's daily challenge. David's arrival did not go unnoticed. His oldest brother Eliab greeted him with a scornful rebuke. "Why camest thou down hither?" he demanded. "And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle." But David, undeterred by his brother's harsh words, felt a growing sense of purpose. He questioned the soldiers around him, his voice filled with a conviction that belied his youthful appearance. "What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine?" he asked, "and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" David's words, spoken with such unwavering faith and courage, ignited a spark of hope in the hearts of some, while others scoffed at the audacity of the young shepherd. Word of David's inquiries reached King Saul, who, desperate for a champion, summoned the young man to his tent. Section 4. 5. Smooth stones and a sling. Faith confronts fear. Saul, his face etched with worry, looked upon David with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him," the king declared, "for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." But David, his voice calm and steady, replied, "Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went out after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him." David's voice resonated with a quiet strength, born of experience and unwavering faith. "The Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear," he declared, "he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine." Saul, though still doubtful, recognized the unwavering faith that shone in David's eyes. He relented, agreeing to let the young shepherd face the giant. The king, clad in his own battle armor, offered his own sword and shield to David, hoping to equip him for the daunting task ahead. But the armor, cumbersome and ill-fitting, hindered David's movements. He removed it, realizing that his strength lay not in the weapons of war, but in the power of the God he served. David, armed with only his shepherd's staff, a sling, and 5 smooth stones chosen from the brook, made his way down into the valley. Goliath, towering above him, watched with a mixture of amusement and contempt. "Am I a dog," he roared, his voice echoing across the battlefield, "that thou comest to me with staves?" He cursed David by his gods, his words laced with venom. But David, undeterred by the giant's taunts, stood his ground. He fixed his gaze upon Goliath, his voice ringing with unwavering faith. "Thou comest to me with a sword and with a spear and with a shield," he declared, "but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied." Section 5. Victory's aftermath. A hero is born. A king is threatened. With a swift, practiced motion, David placed a stone in his sling and hurled it towards Goliath. The stone, propelled with incredible force, found its mark, sinking into the giant's forehead. Goliath, his eyes wide with surprise and pain, staggered back, his massive frame crashing to the ground with a thud that reverberated across the valley. The Philistine army, witnessing the impossible, watched in stunned silence as their champion lay slain. David, his heart pounding with adrenaline and gratitude, ran towards the fallen giant. He drew Goliath's own sword from its sheath, and with a finality that belied his youth, severed the giant's head. The Philistine army, their champion vanquished, their ranks thrown into disarray, turned and fled, their cries of defeat echoing across the battlefield. The Israelite army, their spirits reignited by David's courage and faith, surged forward, pursuing their fleeing enemies. The valley of Elah, moments ago a place of fear and uncertainty, now resonated with the triumphant shouts of the victorious Israelites. David, the shepherd boy who had dared to face a giant, was hailed as a hero, his name on the lips of every soldier. News of David's victory spread like wildfire, reaching the ears of King Saul, who watched from the ridge above, his heart filled with a mixture of relief and a growing sense of unease. Saul, once the embodiment of strength and courage, had been overshadowed by this young shepherd, a mere youth who had accomplished what the king himself had deemed impossible. The seeds of jealousy, sown in that moment of triumph, would take root in Saul's heart, setting in motion a chain of events that would forever alter the course of David's life. Section 1. The Serpent's Whisper. Jealousy takes root in Saul's heart. Victory had brought a hero to Israel, but it had also planted a venomous seed in the heart of its king. Saul, once revered for his courage and strength, now found himself overshadowed by the young shepherd who had dared to face Goliath. The cheers of the crowd, the songs of praise lauding David's bravery, echoed like bitter mockery in Saul's ears. Jealousy, like a serpent, coiled its way into the king's soul, whispering doubts and suspicions. It twisted his thoughts, reminding him of his own fading glory, amplifying the perceived threat posed by this charismatic youth. The king, once confident and resolute, now paced his chamber, his brow furrowed, his heart heavy with a growing darkness. Saul's gaze, once clear and steady, now flickered with suspicion as he observed David, the object of his envy. He saw the young man's growing popularity, the admiration in the eyes of the people, the loyalty he inspired in his soldiers. Each accolade showered upon David served only to deepen the king's resentment, fueling the flames of jealousy that raged within him. The serpent's whisper, persistent and insidious, poisoned Saul's thoughts, turning his admiration for David into a consuming hatred. He convinced himself that this shepherd boy, this hero of the people, was a threat to his throne, a rival for the affections of his subjects. And so the king, blinded by jealousy and consumed by paranoia, resolved to rid himself of the one he perceived as his greatest enemy. David, oblivious to the darkness festering in the king's heart, basked in the warmth of his newfound fame. The king's envy, like a venomous serpent, continued to poison his thoughts, driving him to commit acts of unspeakable cruelty. Forced to flee for his life, David became a fugitive in his own land. On two separate occasions, fate intervened, offering David the opportunity to end his exile and claim the throne that was rightfully his. The news of Saul and Jonathan's demise spread like wildfire across the land, leaving a void in the hearts of the Israelites and a power vacuum at the helm of the nation. David's reign began with a divided kingdom. Jerusalem, a city perched atop a hill, its history stretching back centuries, became the enduring symbol of David's reign. The Ark of the Covenant, a symbol of God's presence and his covenant with Israel, had long been kept in obscurity, hidden away in the house of Abinadab during the tumultuous years of Philistine domination and Saul's troubled reign. David, the shepherd boy who had risen to become the most powerful king in Israel's history, had proven himself a man of courage, wisdom, and unwavering faith. The wages of sin, consequences, and repentance. David's sin with Bathsheba cast a long shadow, not only over his own life, but over the lives of his children. The harmony that had once graced his household, the love and respect that had bound them together, began to unravel, replaced by discord, jealousy, and violence. The consequences of sin, like ripples spreading outward from a stone cast into a still pond, touched each member of David's family, leaving none untouched by its destructive power. Amnon, David's eldest son, consumed by lust for his half-sister Tamar, committed an act of unspeakable cruelty, violating her innocence and shattering the fragile peace that held the family together. The news of Amnon's transgression reached Absalom, Tamar's full brother, igniting within him a firestorm of rage and a thirst for vengeance. The bonds of brotherhood, once unbreakable, now strained under the weight of betrayal and grief. For 2 years, Absalom nursed his anger, plotting his revenge, his heart growing colder with each passing day. He waited for the opportune moment, a time when he could strike back at Amnon without incurring the full wrath of their father. The opportunity arose during a sheep-shearing festival, a time of celebration and merriment. Absalom, his face a mask of feigned cheer, invited all of his brothers to a feast, a gathering intended to mask his murderous intentions. As the wine flowed and the laughter grew louder, Absalom's men, acting on their master's orders, surrounded Amnon, their swords drawn, their faces grim. Amnon, caught off guard, his senses dulled by wine, had no chance to defend himself. He fell beneath a hail of blows, his lifeblood staining the ground, his cries for mercy swallowed by the sounds of revelry. The murder of Amnon sent shockwaves through the house of David, fracturing the already fragile peace beyond repair. David, consumed by grief and guilt, mourned the loss of his son, his heart heavy with the knowledge that his own sin had paved the way for this tragedy. Absalom, fearing his father's wrath, fled Jerusalem, seeking refuge in the court of his grandfather Talmai, the king of Geshur. Years passed, the wounds of the past festering, resentment growing like a weed in the hearts of both father and son. Absalom, emboldened by his exile and fueled by a thirst for power, began to plot against his father, his ambition growing with each passing day. He used his charm and charisma to win over the hearts of the people, whispering tales of David's neglect, fanning the flames of discontent. When the time was right, Absalom made his move, launching a full-scale rebellion against his father's rule. He marched on Jerusalem, his army swelling with disaffected Israelites, their ranks bolstered by seasoned warriors loyal to Absalom's cause. The city, once a symbol of David's power and unity, now faced the unthinkable, a siege led by the king's own son. David, faced with the devastating reality of his son's betrayal, was forced to flee the city he had conquered and made his own. The anguish of that moment, the pain of seeing his own flesh and blood turned against him, cut him to the core. Yet even as he fled, his heart heavy with sorrow, David refused to raise his hand against Absalom. Deal gently with the young man, even with Absalom, he commanded his soldiers, his voice breaking with emotion. The rebellion, as swift and brutal as it was, ultimately ended in tragedy. Absalom, his army routed by David's forces, met his end not on the battlefield, but suspended from the branches of a mighty oak tree, his long hair, a symbol of his vanity and ambition, entangled in the boughs. The news of his son's demise, though a victory for David's loyal followers, brought him no joy, only a profound sense of loss and a grief that echoed the lamentations he had penned years earlier, following the death of his infant son. "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom!" David cried, his voice raw with anguish, his body racked with sobs. "Would God I had died for thee, O Absalom, my son, my son!" In that moment of profound grief, the weight of his past sins, the consequences of his choices, pressed down upon him with renewed force. He had conquered his enemies, secured his kingdom, and established a dynasty, but the price of his triumphs had been high. As his reign drew to a close, David, his body weakened by age and his spirit burdened by loss, turned his attention to securing the future of his kingdom. He had learned, through both triumph and tragedy, that true power lay not in military might or political maneuvering, but in obedience to God's will. And so he summoned Solomon, the son born of his ill-fated union with Bathsheba, the child who had inherited both his father's charisma and his mother's wisdom. "Be strong and show thyself a man," David charged his son, his voice a raspy whisper, his gaze filled with a lifetime of experience. "And keep the charge of the Lord thy God, to walk in his ways, to keep his statutes and his commandments and his judgments and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, that thou mayest prosper in all that thou doest and whithersoever thou turnest thyself." David's story, like the echoes of a shepherd's flute carried on the wind, continues to resonate through the corridors of time. He was a man of contradictions, a warrior king who penned poetry that touched the soul, a shepherd who ascended to a throne, a flawed human who experienced the depths of God's grace. His life, a tapestry woven with threads of triumph and tragedy, of unwavering faith and devastating sin, stands as a testament to the complexities of the human experience. History remembers David as a mighty king, a brilliant strategist, a unifier of a nation. He expanded Israel's borders, secured its defenses, and established Jerusalem as a beacon of power and prestige. He laid the foundations for a dynasty, a lineage that would culminate in the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, the King of Kings. But David's legacy extends far beyond his political and military achievements. He was a man after God's own heart, a phrase that speaks not to his perfection, but to the depth of his devotion, his willingness to acknowledge his shortcomings, and his unwavering faith, even in the face of his own failures. David's life is a reminder that greatness in the eyes of God is not defined by outward success or a spotless record. It is measured by the condition of the heart, by the depth of our love for God, and by our willingness to walk humbly before Him, seeking His guidance, His forgiveness, and His transforming power. Centuries have passed since David walked the dusty paths of ancient Israel, yet the echoes of his life continue to resonate with a power that transcends time and culture. His story, woven into the fabric of human experience, offers timeless lessons for the modern soul, insights that speak to the challenges, the triumphs, and the deepest longings of the human heart. David's journey reminds us that God sees beyond outward appearances, beyond our successes and failures, into the depths of our being. He sees our potential, our passions, our fears, and our dreams. He calls us, as He called David, not because we are perfect, but because He sees in us a reflection of His own image, a capacity for greatness that can only be fully realized through a life surrendered to His will. David's life is a testament to the power of faith, a faith that sustained him through seasons of adversity and uncertainty. He faced giants, battled enemies, and navigated the treacherous waters of power, all the while clinging to his belief in a God who saw him, knew him, and loved him unconditionally. His story encourages us to embrace the power of vulnerability, to acknowledge our weaknesses and shortcomings before God. David's Psalms, raw and honest expressions of his heart, remind us that we are not alone in our struggles, that our joys and sorrows are understood, and that even in the darkest of nights, a dawn of hope awaits those who place their trust in God. David's life, with all its complexities and contradictions, ultimately points us toward a profound truth. True fulfillment, lasting joy, and genuine peace are found not in the pursuit of power, wealth, or fleeting pleasures, but in a heart attuned to God. David's story is a timeless call to faith, an invitation to experience the transformative power of a life surrendered to a God who sees beyond our imperfections, who loves us unconditionally, and who guides our steps with wisdom and compassion. It is a call to embrace vulnerability, to pour out our hearts to God in prayer, to seek His guidance in times of uncertainty, and to find solace in His presence. David's legacy is not confined to the pages of history. It lives on in the lives of countless individuals who, inspired by his example, choose to walk a path of faith, seeking to live lives that reflect the heart of God. It is a legacy built not on perfection, but on the transformative power of grace, forgiveness, and a love that knows no bounds. May we, like David, strive to live lives that echo the words penned centuries ago, lives that resonate with the timeless truth, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." Thank you for watching. Do not forget to subscribe, like, and share.